Welcome to the Pro Animator Up and Running course. We're going to jump right in and show you how fast you can make a 3D animation from start to finish using the Zaxworks 3D Pro Animator plugin. This is going to be a lot of fun and it's going to be fast. If there's one word to remember about Pro Animator, it's fast. What you're watching now is Tutorial 1B. It's for the plugin version of Pro Animator. If you want to learn about the standalone version, not the plugin, but the standalone version, please go to Chapter 2, Tutorial 1A. The first time we go through this, it'll seem like we're moving pretty fast, but I want you to pay attention to the number of clicks. The actual number of clicks that we do is very low. We aren't going to speed up the video and compress 2 hours of work into 2 minutes. This really will be an entire animation, start to finish, in 2 minutes. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, so I already have After Effects running, so let's make a comp. We go comp, new comp, and that one's fine. 12, 80, 10, perfect. Okay, so we'll just click OK. Now we have a comp. And now let's go layer, new, solid. Okay, the important thing to remember is to click Make Comp Size. That's important if you're going to use the After Effects comp camera. If you're doing a bug, or if you're doing a lower third or a side screen type of thing, you may not need to have the solid be the exact same size as your comp. So we'll get there when we get there. In the meantime, let's make it comp size and let's call it Pro Animator. Okay, good, and okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is add the plugin to the solid. So we go to Effect, Zaxworks, Pro Animator. Now I'm assuming that you already have installed the software once, so you've already entered the authorization code or had clicked the demo button, whatever. Once you go through that, you'll see this window, which is your startup screen, and it gives you some options. Let's click the Create 3D Text button. We do that, and here is our text window. Now this window lets you have per character control. Got that? It's not like one big text block. It lets you have individual control over the font, size, kerning, baseline shift for every single character in your 3D text item. So let's start by typing in Pro Animator, P-R-O Animator. There we go. Now this is our font list. These are the main fonts, and this is the column for the font styles. So in order to change the font, you need to select the letters that you want to change. So you could only select, for instance, just the animator part, and then come over here and select different fonts to use on just those particular letters. Or you could select the whole thing. In this case, we'll select the whole thing, like that, and then change the font for everything at once. And let's see, let's go here. And once you've selected this column over here, you can actually use the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard. So here's the down arrow key, and you see that lets you see what the letters look like in the font that you're working with. Okay, very good. Let's go to Gill Sans, and then you can select the subfamily, the font styles, off of this menu over here. And again, once you've clicked and you see the little yellow box around it, you can use the up and down arrow keys to select the individual items. So Gill Sans Light is the one I'm using. If you have something similar, great. Now just click OK. All right, and at this point you've already got a model. It's been modeled for you, set up, and it's now sitting inside the comp window. Now, if I start to drag right here, right now, you see it's not rotating anything, it's just moving the solid around. So we don't want to do that. Undo. We need to be able to move the Pro Animator's own camera. We can use the comp camera, and we'll go over this in a little bit at the end of the tutorial. But for right now, let's not use the comp camera. Let's just use Pro Animator's own camera, and we get to it by clicking here on this picture button, and that then opens up the Pro Animator setup window. Okay, so this will maybe look a little intimidating at the very beginning, but just don't pay any attention to this stuff along the bottom. Okay, none of this stuff down here is important to us right now. All we're looking at is the timeline and the 3D window over here, with the one exception of the workspace buttons, because the first thing we're going to do to these objects after we've created them is to color them. So if we go down to workspace and come over here to materials, that's the 3D word for coloring. So you go to the material section, and then you've got material swatches if you want to apply individual materials, and you just drag and drop them onto the letters, and they all change color just like this. Or you can go to object styles, and this is complete combinations of different looks, which includes the thickness, the shading, the type of material, and where the material is applied to the objects. And you apply these in the same way. Click, drag down, and then drop it once the cursor is over your letters. And then you see you've got this whole material setup with just a simple drag and drop. So let's go on down here. You see there's lots of different ones we can play around with. They look extra special and nice. And we can come down here near the bottom. You'll find some that look like these two black guys sitting right there. These are called the Shadowfax, I believe. A little call out to a fabulous jazz group. And now we can zoom in with this. You'll notice I've got the camera button selected, and this is the dolly tool, so it lets us zoom in. And then this is the tumble tool, which we can then use to take a look at how these objects are set up. So this looks pretty cool. Good, let's go with that for now. The next step is to apply the animation. So we come down again to our workspace area, go to the animation controls and click that animation workspace button, and that sets up the animation workspace for us. Now again, all we're going to pay attention to is the timeline right here, and especially we're going to look at this object animation menu up here at the top. If you give this a click, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of animations that come with the program as presets for you to use. So you can choose any of these. Like for instance, let's choose this bug that's called Lemmings. And when you choose this, it sets the camera up and then creates the animation for you where these little guys walk on the screen and then fly off. So it's a little bug like you would see at television down in the lower right corner. And this is the animation that's used to set it up. Now this doesn't look like a normal animation. There are no keyframes in here. It's just poses and transitions. So what you have is you have a pose right here, that's the dark blue bar, then a transition as the objects move to this pose, which is the hold on screen, and then another transition as they move off screen to this pose, which is the off screen pose. Now, the next thing we're going to do is click the try button. The try button is fun. What it does is it will pick one of those animations that I showed you, one of them from the list at random, and construct the animation for you automatically so you can just see what it looks like. If you ever want to know what the animation is that you just selected, you click on the animation button and then go here where it says lower third, swoop and tumble. So we go here, it swoops on, and then it tumbles off. So if you ever want to apply that same animation again, you go down here to the lower thirds, and then you find swoop and tumble. Right there it is. So if I pick that same one, it would create the same animation for us. So that's how that works. Now if I can hit try again, and what it'll do is it'll erase the old one and then it replaces it with a new one. So here we go. They fly in and they fade off. Hit try again and it does something else. Pro Animator holds and then it does a little hop for us. Isn't that sweet? Okay. Now to get us back on the same page, because whenever you hit try, you're going to get an entirely different animation than I am when I hit try. So what I'd like for us to do to get back on the same page together is click on the animation button, go down here to centered, and choose the blown animation. So what this will do is this will simulate the characters being blown on by the wind, falling into position, and then being blown off. You can see this. It's a very cinematic sort of look. And you can see your main titles flying in and flying off in between cuts at the well, nice transitions, nice dissolves since we're doing cinematic. So very nice look. Just pick that for right now, and then we'll go on to the next step. Well, the next step is to render, because we now have objects, we've got them colored, and we've set up the animation. So now the next step is to render the animation. So here's what you do for that. If you're inside the setup window and you want to see what it looks like in final quality, you just click this button here called Render Test. And what that does is that then renders it with reflections, refractions, shadows, lighting, and full quality anti-aliasing exactly the same way that it'll appear in your After Effects comp. Now, if you have the horsepower, if you have a computer that's fast enough to do this, you can turn on auto render. And what auto render does is that will keep it in final render quality at all times. See, when this is off, I can hit render test and it's in final quality, but as soon as I move it, you see now it's back to non-final quality. There's a really obvious, you see when I have a transition selected, you're going to see the motion paths too, because this little button's turned on. Okay, that's how you turn motion paths on and off. But when I turn on auto render, they're going to disappear and show me what the final quality rendering is going to look like. Okay, you see how that works. So if you have auto render turned on and everything's keeping up to speed for you, you can go ahead and leave it there. Otherwise, we'll turn it off and then go back to After Effects. Actually, one other thing. Let's go down to the output panel. I do want to show you this. This is where you choose between the real-time OpenGL GPU renderer, okay, the super fast real-time renderer, or the ray tracer. Now our ray tracer is awfully doggone fast too. If we select ray tracer right now and click render test, actually let's put this in auto render and see what we've got. Oh yeah, we've got this set up so that it'll switch back to preview mode while you're dragging, and then as soon as you let go, it does the final ray trace rendering. That's again just to keep interaction speed super fast. Okay, but that's how the ray tracer works. For now though, let's leave it on the OpenGL renderer. This is also where you set the anti-aliasing level, so you can have good, better, best quality on that, and it's also where you turn motion blur on as well. So everything's good here. Let's turn auto render off for the time being and click OK, and that puts us back into the After Effects timeline. So here we go. Now we are back in the After Effects timeline. Let's go to the end of the animation, which is about right there. Hit the B key, the N key to set our work area and do a RAM preview. So it's coming on, and look at that, it's rendering actually faster than real time. Right, and swings on, swings off. Okay, so there we go. So that's our animation playing back as a RAM preview in full quality. Now I know it's full quality because this switch right here is on best quality. If I flip this off, if I flip this to jaggedy line, all right, it's only going to be showing me the draft quality. So you see how it's a lot more ragged around the edges. Okay, sometimes you need to do that to keep the rendering speed up. We give you that option. All right, it's super fast and it's guaranteed real time when it's in draft quality. You can leave it in draft quality at all times until you do the final rendering. And the easy way to do that is when you're done and you add it to your render queue, you can come down here. Let's see, I've got one of these left over. So this is the render queue that we just said. Set the render settings to best settings. Okay, now what that means is that when it's ready for the final rendering, it will automatically flip this little switch to best quality for you when it does the final rendering. So it keeps things super fast and interactive at all times. Okay, so at this point, you're done. You're done with the Pro Animator. Anything else is just standard After Effects stuff. So like if I brought this star field in here, right, and I bring this down, you see now it's just, the Pro Animator is just a comp on top of all the other stuff that I'm doing. So I can still do a RAM preview on this, and whether it's moving footage or whether it's special effects or anything else that I'm laying on top of it, you see it's all going to work just fine and dandy, just like that. Okay, so that was the entire workflow. Now, sorry, I guess I missed my 2-minute mark. There's just too many other things to talk about along the way because I want you to understand what's going on, and I want you to understand how easy it is. So let's do this over again now. I want to walk you through the workflow one more time so you understand what's going on and see exactly how easy it really, really is. Now, to clean up your scene, there's 2 ways of doing that. A couple ways actually. One, some people will just delete the effect, which will completely reset everything. However, sometimes you don't want to do that. You may have like layer maps already set up and you don't want to delete those. So I'm going to show you another way of doing that. If you come in here, go into your setup window, all right, what you can do is click here on this track, and then under track commands, use the delete track command. And it'll ask you if you're sure, and you say yes indeed. And at this point then everything's deleted, your tracks are gone, your objects are gone. The other way of doing it is to go in here and then do new scene. And when you do new scene, are you sure you want to save this? Yes. And there you go. Now the entire scene has been reset, including all of the materials and things like that have been reset as well. Okay, so now we're going to do this again, and we're going to keep it just as fast, and I'm going to add a few other details as we go along. So here we go. When you're already in here, when you're already in the setup window, okay, 3D Pro Animator setup window, you no longer get that opening screen. Remember when we first added the effect, that window popped up which had some big buttons in it that said, do you want to create 3D text? Do you want to open imported objects? What do you want to do? Well, you only get that the very first time you add the effect to a layer. If you already have the effect here, you still need to know how to get other objects into your scene. So the object menu right here, notice the After Effects menu is up top. This is the Pro Animator's own special menu, and it has an object menu right here. This is the Create More Stuff menu. That's what it boils down to. So we have create text here. We've got create lathe objects, primitives like spheres, cones, Illustrator files, import 3D objects from any 3D program, etc., stuff like that. Let's keep it simple and just do a 3D text object again. Here's our text window. Gill Sans Light is still selected, so at this point, please type in victory. Victory is yours. Space exclamation mark. Okay, now let's talk for a second about text layout. Okay, this arrow right here sets the margins, also sets the column width. So you'll see as we change this, everything's wrapping. Okay, so you can set this on the fly. Now, what we want to do is I'd like us to create a two-line animation where it says "Victory is yours," but I want the exclamation mark on the second line and victory on the line by itself. So right here you see there's this tiny little place where it'll wrap properly. This is what we want to do, but this is a little dangerous. Okay, the reason why is that if you come back, if you have to make a change later and you change the size of the font or you change the font itself, it's going to make it a little bit wider and it might end up wrapping and ending up like this, which causes you a little bit of work. So if you have a ton of text, you can use columns. Otherwise, it's more easy to just remove the space and hit return, and that way it separates these guys and puts them on two different lines. So now the margin's not going to matter as long as it doesn't get too skinny. So there you go. We're good. We click OK, and we've just done step number 1, which is create the objects. Fantastic. Now, step number 2 is to come down here to the workspaces, click on the Materials button, and then start applying materials to it. Like I said, you can apply individual materials or you can go to object styles. This time let's go straight to object styles and we can apply things like this and take a look at them. Now here's the first thing I want to point out to you. It looks like we're moving the objects around, doesn't it? That's not exactly the case though, because when I switch this over to floor, you can see that the floor is moving too. So what's happening here is we're actually moving the camera around the objects. See, if you can imagine that you had a camera in your hand and you're looking through the viewfinder, this is what you'd see. So now you see we're walking to the left, and now we're walking to the right, and now we're getting down and looking up at the objects, and now we're lifting up over the top of them and looking down at them. You see, so I'm moving the camera around. You can move objects too, though, and you do that by clicking this button, which puts you into object mode. Now watch what happens. We start to move and we get this warning. We're going to get this alert about tweaking things, and we'll get into tweaks in just a little bit, but for now just click OK, and now you see you're moving the objects and the floor is staying where it is. So this is what you use to move individual objects. Hit undo, and the camera button is what you use to set up the camera for the scene or to animate the camera. You get how those work together? Okay, good. Go to display, turn off the floor, and now we're back to where we were. So this is looking pretty good, but what I'd like you to do now is go down to the bottom and choose this one right here. This one's called Gold Award. Drag and drop it onto the object and take a look. So let's take the dolly button and zoom in real tight, and then back to tumble tool, and now you see we can take a look at this. You see this looks like it's got stacks and stacks of objects all piled up on top of each other. Very cool. But I want to point out how this is made. So rotate this around and then drag down so you're looking straight from the top, and then use the tracking tool and then drag over to the right like this. Okay, and what you're going to see is this shape right here is the shape that you see down here inside of our material splits area. There's that same shape as seen from above. You see there it says front here, back right there. So here's the front, here's the back of your 3D objects. Got it? Front, back, and these are the outsides right here where it says outside. Now we also have another one here for the holes, but they're dotted, which means they're not activated right now. Let me show you though that if we turn this up and take a look at the hole right here, we can actually give the holes for our objects different materials or a different scale or an entirely different bevel. So we can even draw our own bevels to make the inside of the holes open back up again. Whenever you've got holes that are too small and you put a nice big look on the outside, a nice big bevel on the outside of your letters, oftentimes the insides of small holes will plug up. And having separate control over the color or the material or the scale or the bevel itself is the way that you clean up that look and keep your, keep the text police from yelling at you and getting you in trouble. So that's what this is in a nutshell. Now notice this. These are the two materials that are applied to this object. So here you see the gold says number 1, and the number 1 is around this side here. Then it switches to number 2. Number 2 is this black, and so you see that's that little edge right there. There's the black, then it goes gold, black, and gold. So here we have number 1, then number 2, then number 1, then number 2, and then number 1 again. You see how this is working? It's pretty easy. So one of the things that we can do is customize the look of our object styles. Now right now this is just an object style as comes from the factory, but of course you want to change it. You're a human, you are a designer, you want to make it yours. So we no longer need to fiddle with the object styles because one's already been applied. So now what we can do is apply an individual material. So here's what we do. The first thing, in order to get a separate material, a new material onto this object, we have to be able to bring it and load it into this docking area. So let's take this green, bring it down here and drop it, and now we've loaded it into dock number 3. So once it's here, we can click on the object and move it over, click on the swatch, and you see once my cursor is here, it has a little number 3 next to it. Well, wherever I drop that, you see there it shows you a red highlight showing you where it's going to apply it. So I could drop it here, and you see now it's going to be across the back. Let me undo. If I bring this thing in and I drop it here, you see now it's going to be on the side right there. So you see that little number 3? So I'm going to undo that too. And if I bring it here, I can drop it right on the front. So I could bring it on the front and then bring it again and drop it on the side, and then I end up with something that looks like this. So I've got a multicolored bevel all set up, super duper easy. This is just a little bit more color than I'd like though, so I'm going to bring this 1 here and drop the 1 back on top. So all we have is just this one color like that. So once it's been split, I'd no longer have to drop here. I could though. So like I can bring this red down and drop it on this material and it's going to color it red. If this material was already on the side too, then if I brought in say this blue and dropped it on the red, you see it colors them both because it knows which one is supposed to be colored with which. So this blue is looking actually pretty good. I just want to get rid of that, so let's go back to gold for that one. And there we go. Okay, very nice. Victory is yours. So let's back up a little bit. And remember, you've now done the second step. So step number 1, make the object. Step number 2, color the object. Step number 3 is animating them. So we go to animation, we come here, and again we can click the try button if we want to do that. That's a fragmentation right there. Let's see what else we have. Fade on. Nah. There you go. That one's pretty good. Tell you what, let's get back synced together again. So what I like to do is click on this and then come down and go to crash zoom and then crash zoom curves. All right, choose that one, and it's going to set the animation up for us, and then here's what we have. So here we go. Now click this little button to stop it. Notice that you can click this to start or stop. It's going to play the work area, so it's going to go between the green and the red marker. There's the green one, there's the red one, and when you click on this, it's going to play to the end and then loop back to the beginning. At any time, we can just click and drag the time marker, and then when we let go, it starts playing again. Okay, so you see what's going on now is it's crashing on for us. It's holding for a short period of time, and then it's doing this really nice arc as it comes off the screen. So, very cool. So, let's say that's it. We're all done. Time to go back and now hit OK. And now we are back inside of our 3D window, our ProAnimator window, where we can do a RAM preview and zip through the RAM preview. It's doing the rendering really quick. And there we go. Okay, good enough. Fair enough. So that's what we've got. Okay, definitely cool. Now, like I said before, now you're back in After Effects space. But before we leave, let's talk about a couple more things that are specific to the After Effects plugin, and that's dealing with the comp camera and the comp lights. First of all, comp camera. Now, there is no comp camera here right now. So if you go up here and add one, layer, new camera, and then click OK, the comp camera is now here, but you'll notice that nothing happened as far as ProAnimator goes. That's because Use Comp Camera is turned off. ProAnimator gives you the options about whether you want to use the comp camera or not. A lot of times people find it easier to use the ProAnimator camera. Other times they want different animations happening in different ways, and when everything is locked to the comp camera, it makes it a little bit difficult. So let's say though that you do want to use the comp camera, so you turn it on. As soon as you do that, you notice how the objects change position. So when I turn it off, you see they're close. When I turn it back on, now it's far away. That's because the comp camera is just further back. So what we can do is choose our comp camera, there we go, our orbit tool, click the C button until we're going in and out, and then we can zoom in on this a little bit like this. And if we'd like, we can even use the Unified tool and rotate left to right to get a slightly different view of the one that we had already. So as soon as we do this, there it is, coming right at us. Now you see it's still, the object stopped a little too early. So let's zoom in a little bit tighter. There we go. Now they're going to be just past the camera. There we go. Victory is yours. Okay, so that's approximately the same view that we had before. The nice thing about using the comp camera, though, is that everything's integrated. So if you do have other After Effects layers, you can make them match up with the comp camera so that the 3D title and the After Effects layers look like they're all in the same space. Now, if you do the comp camera, let me show something, okay? Let me show you something. When this checkbox is on and you go into the ProAnimator setup window, the main camera that's there will now suddenly be called the comp camera with a note that it's locked. All right, and we also put this right here to let you know that nothing that you do right here is going to change things, right? You can't move things around here. In fact, every time you try to do this, we keep giving you this warning message that says the comp camera is locked and cannot be changed. Would you like to switch to a user camera? So you say, sure. So now we're in a user camera, and you see user camera is right here. We can get back to the comp camera if we like, but otherwise we can choose a user camera, and now you see we can move around in the scene just as though we have individual control over this guy, which of course we do. Now there is the comp camera. So that gives you an actual view of what the comp camera is looking at, so that you know, it helps you set up your scene. So if the thing needs to go off screen a little bit further, you know, you can adjust where the letters are. So as they go past the camera, you can see what's going on. All right, so that's Use Comp Camera, and that's how Use Camera works, User Camera works, and etc. like that. Now, the next thing is Use Comp Lights. ProAnimator has a complete lighting system. It's very extensive, and it all animates, and you get to it by clicking this button right here. When you click this, it adds a light track. Again, there's a bunch of controls down here, which we'll get into in a future tutorial. In the meantime, though, just know that when you turn this on, you've got all the light. You can do light beams, you can do lens flares, you can do all sorts of crazy, amazing stuff that ProAnimator has built inside of it that After Effects does not have. However, sometimes you might want to use After Effects lights, and if you do that, it's probably best to delete the light track. So we come here and we go delete track, and we just knock that guy off and then click here, and then it's time to use comp lights. Okay, whenever you're using the comp lights, you really should also use the comp camera. Otherwise you'll be moving things over here and it's not going to look like it matches up. So if you turn on comp lights, of course there are no comp lights here right now, but that's what you would do. You would add a new light and say a spot, sure, there you go. And at this point now you'll see you have comp lights. So you can adjust this guy, and you see as you're moving it along, he's going to light up the different parts of the objects, just like regular lights, just like regular After Effects lights. So this lets you have really fine-grained detail. A lot of times you don't need quite this much fine grain. You don't need this much detail, but it's here. So if you want to use comp lights, that's how you turn that on. If you want to use the comp camera, that's how you turn that on. All right, so anything else, all these trackers and layer maps things, though, that's we'll be covering that in a future tutorial. In the meantime, that's how the After Effects Pro Animator plugin works. Anything past this point is going to be just adding more detail. Remember, we started by creating the objects, we then created the materials, we put the materials onto the objects, then set up the animation, and then did the rendering. Those 4 steps are the same basic 4 steps for everything. Got it? It's very simple. You can add a lot more detail to these guys. You can bring in 3D objects, you can bring in logos, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. You can make entire environments. Pro Animator has the settings and the controls for doing really fancy lighting and really beautiful, gorgeous animation, just like you see every day in the professional world. All right, and you have that control now in your hands. We're going to take this as the basic start, add to it little by little, and you're going to be creating some amazing stuff within the next few tutorials. All right, so if you can follow along with this, everything after this point is just adding more detail, but everything is going to be just as easy. Got that? Okay, so let's take the next step in chapter 3.